Again, we should take the church's readings in the order in which they're given and look to that order. Okay, so today we have now the prodigal son. So prodigal is a Latin word, and it's the word that we get prodigious from. So it's a life of extravagance. It's a lack of care, just want to spend money and live in extravagance, and it implies some degree of having to have money to live that life of extravagance. But the Greek term that is used for the prodigal is from the noun asotia, so asotos. So in that you have zoso, and you place the a in front of it, right? And you negate it. Okay, so in this case, the Greek has a little bit of a different meaning. So literally, it would mean the one who is not saved. And that not saved then is the implication of the life that he has chosen to live, right? He's living now this life of undiscipline. So there is that hint of extravagance and spending money recklessly, but the Greek term adds that this is done without thought. So there's no thought or care in terms of what are the consequences going to be. So that might be a better way to say it, is that asotia is the sense that you are doing things but not really understanding what the consequences of those actions are. So in itself, there is that lesson. So although there's three characters that play into this parable, the prodigal son, the father, and then the eldest son, I just want to talk just very briefly about the son who goes away, all right? Because in that now, we have, between him and the son, what we have is a nice comparison to the publican and the Pharisee, which we had last week, right? We had the publican and the Pharisee, right? And so what we have in the eldest son is a hint of the Pharisee, the legal and righteousness of the son. In the prodigal son, we have the echo of the publican, the one who has realized what he has done and beats his breast and said, I now want to return to the Father. And then obviously we have the Father who then symbolizes then God the Father. Okay, so what are we supposed to take away then from the Son? Well, three things in particular that we see in the story. Number one, the first is something, again, that I can relate to in my very life, is a desire for independence. I can remember growing up that the one thing I wanted was to get out of the house, and I wanted to be my own man and do whatever it is that I thought was right. That's what I wanted. I dreamed about it, and the minute that I graduated, I didn't want to be in and again, not to say that this is bad, but I didn't want to go to a university that was within 5,000 miles of my home. I wanted to be somewhere else where I could be independent. And so my old man thought, yeah, well, you're not going to do that. I'm going to let you be at least 100 miles away so that I can check up on you because I know you. I know who you are. My mom's listening. She's laughing over here. Okay? And so, but that was my thought. Independence. Independence from everything to include God. Because that was something that I necessarily didn't have time for. Because I'm too busy building my own future, which I have charted on my own course. And, unfortunately, prior to meeting Presbytera, who got me fixed up correctly and on the right path again, all right? Presbytera's listened to that, so. Is I had a couple of years where I could, as was here, is eat the pods of the swine. And there was a realization that came from that. And that's the second lesson, is that what ended up happening to me is that I recognized the two gifts that I had been given from God. The first was reason. The first was to begin to understand that the asotia that I was living was incongruent with now staying alive for any length of time. So in that sense, I was able to use my reason. That reason came in the form of my wife, right? I had cleaned up a little bit before I met her, so it was better. Right? And so I was able to use that reason to understand that my life is not my own. My life belongs to someone else. Yeah, yes, it belongs to your wife, I got it. But belongs to God. And then the second one was the second greatest gift that God gives us is free will. And I had recognized that I had used my free will improperly. And that true freedom and independence is obedience to God. Again, that runs absolutely counterculture to anything that sounds American, right? American is, I'm independent, nobody tells me what to do, and I don't have obedience to anybody. And as Orthodox, we are 180 degrees from that, is that our use of reason is to be thinking about God, and our use of free will is to understand and do His will. Now, do we do that perfectly every day? Of course not. But that's what we're striving for. And this is now what Lent is going to bring us back in. So like the son who lives in the weeds and the pods, Lent is that time for us to remember that our Father waits for us for the great feast and to kill the calf. And then the third lesson that comes out of this is the wonderful lesson of action. The problem with reason a lot of times is that too many people spend way too much time reasoning, and they will analyze themselves to death. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I think this is the right thing. This sounds spiritual. Let me think about it. Let me check. I don't know. And so what ends up happening is you become then this caricature of inaction because you end up doing nothing. So reason is only effective when it leads to a plan of action. And this is what we have in the Son. It says he came to himself, right? So that he recognized in his own mind, he used his reason. But the next line is, I will go to my Father, and I will go to him as a servant. So he's a man of action. And that's what we have here. The same way we saw in Zacchaeus, or we're going to see in Zacchaeus, who is up in the tree to see Jesus. Jesus says, I am coming to your house, Zacchaeus. And he comes down immediately and leads him to his house. So these are the three things that we can take away from just the prodigal son, is to recognize what our use of reason and free will is proper. And then second, to understand that a life of independence where we are master can become problematic and will have its consequences. Many times those consequences will be bad. And then lastly, once we decide what is the proper action because our reason tells us that, imbued by God, then we should act on that action immediately and not wait around and think about all the things that could or might or did or whatever happened. So let's take those three lessons away and let's watch as these biblical passages help us now to understand how we are to move into the Lenten period.